lovely you underneath the wreath of heaven's.
It was supposed to be a simple noir, a man on the run, a mystery in the snow, shadows in black and white. But Nightfall didn't play by the rules. The director rewrote scenes on napkins. The star nearly froze to death in the wilderness. And one shot, it was filmed with equipment borrowed from a funeral home. These are 20 weird facts about Nightfall. And the bonus, let's just say even Hitchcock took notes. Buckle up. This noir goes darker than you think. Before Nightfall became a film, it was a novel most studios wouldn't touch. David Goodis wrote it in 1947, a paperback original that never saw hardcover. It was too bleak, too desperate, too raw. The protagonist wasn't a hero. He was a victim caught in a web he didn't spin, running from criminals and cops alike. Publishers called it unmarketable. Readers called it brilliant. For nearly a decade, Hollywood ignored it completely. Then Jacques Tourneur read it on a plane. The director of Cat People and Out of the Past didn't see a problem story. He saw pure cinema. Dark highways, moral ambiguity, characters trapped by fate. He bought the rights himself, not through a studio, just a personal check and a handshake. The studios thought he was insane. A noir about a man who did nothing wrong but couldn't prove it? In 1956, when westerns and musicals dominated, they told him it would never work. Tourneur didn't argue. He just started shooting. Because Nightfall wasn't written to please executives. It was written to haunt them until it's too late to stop them. Aldo Ray wasn't Hollywood's idea of a leading man. He had a gravelly voice that sounded like he gargled rocks. His face was rough, weathered, more working class than matinee idol. Tourneur wanted someone who looked like he'd actually been through hell. Austin. The casting director asked him to read a scene where Vanning explains his innocence. Ray delivered it flat, tired, like a man who'd told the story 100 times and stopped believing anyone would listen. Most actors would have played it with emotion, with desperation. Ray played it like defeat. And that's exactly what Tourneur wanted. He told the studio, this guy doesn't look like he's pretending to run. He looks like he's been running his whole life. The studio gave in, no star billing, no back-end deal. Ray took it anyway, but because he understood something Hollywood had forgotten. Anne Bancroft was 25 years old and already being written off. She'd been in Hollywood for 5 years, bouncing between small roles and screen tests that went nowhere. Studios kept telling her the same thing. Too intense, too New York, not glamorous enough for leading lady parts. She was being typecast before she even had a career. Then Nightfall came along. The role of Marie Gardner wasn't huge, but it was crucial. A woman caught between wanting to help and knowing better. This wasn't a damsel. This was a survivor. She showed up to the audition with one request: let me play her tired. Tourneur didn't understand at first. Tired? Bancroft explained. This woman works a job, pays rent, deals with creeps every day. She's not waiting to be rescued. She's deciding whether this guy is worth the risk. Tourneur watched her read one scene and hired her on the spot. But here's the twist. During filming, Bancroft kept pushing the character further. She'd improvise little moments, lighting a cigarette wrong, checking her watch, small gestures that showed Marie thinking 3 steps ahead. Tourneur loved it. The studio hated it. They wanted her softer. Tourneur refused to cut a single frame. Years later, Bancroft would win an Oscar and become a legend, but Nightfall was the moment she stopped asking permission. The snow scenes weren't filmed in California. They weren't filmed on a soundstage with fake snow and wind machines. Tourneur wanted real cold, real wilderness, real danger. So the production packed up and headed to Sun Valley, Idaho, in the middle of winter. It was a nightmare. Temperatures dropped to 15 below zero. Equipment froze. Film stock cracked. The crew worked in shifts because frostbite became a genuine concern. Aldo Ray filmed an entire sequence running through waist-deep snow with nothing but a thin jacket. No stunt double, no safety crew standing by with heaters. Tourneur kept the cameras rolling because he wanted to see Ray's breath, wanted to see real fear in his eyes. Ray later admitted he thought he might actually die during one take. He stumbled, fell face first into a snowbank, and couldn't get up for nearly a minute. The crew started running toward him. Tourneur yelled, "Keep rolling!" When Ray finally pulled himself out, gasping, disoriented, Tourneur smiled and said, "That's the one." The scene stayed in the film exactly as it happened. No edits, no safety net. Just a man fighting to survive while the camera watched. Hollywood had gotten too comfortable with studio lots and rear projection. Tourneur dragged them back into the cold. And what you see on screen, that's not acting. That's endurance. Brian Keith played John, one of the criminals hunting Vanning, and he terrified everyone on set. Not because he was difficult, because he refused to break character between takes. From the moment he arrived in the morning until wrap, he stayed in John's headspace. Cold, calculating, dangerous. During lunch, he'd sit alone, eating in silence, watching the other actors with dead eyes. Anne Bancroft later said she avoided him completely when cameras weren't rolling because he made her genuinely uncomfortable. The crew nicknamed him the Iceman and stopped trying to make small talk. But here's the thing, Keith wasn't method acting, he was protecting the film. He'd worked on too many noirs where the villain turned charming off camera and the menace evaporated on screen. He told Tourneur, "If I'm supposed to be the guy who ruins this man's life, I can't be laughing with him at craft services." Tourneur didn't ask him to do it. Keith just understood. And it worked. Every scene between Keith and Ray crackles with genuine tension because Ray wasn't acting scared. He actually was. Keith kept the fear real by never letting anyone forget who he was playing. When filming wrapped, Keith finally dropped the persona, walked up to Ray and apologized. Ray just laughed and said, "Don't, it worked." Sometimes the best villains are the ones who never let you see them smile. The film's title was almost changed 3 different times. The studio didn't like Nightfall. They thought it sounded too literary, too vague, too art house. They wanted something pulpy, something that screamed noir from the marquee. The first suggestion was Dark Highway. Tourneur said no, too generic. Then The Fugitive Chase. Tourneur said absolutely not. It sounds like a Western. Finally, they pitched Woman in the Snow, trying to capitalize on Anne Bancroft's presence. Tourneur walked out of the meeting. He went straight to the producer and said, "Change the title, and I'll take my name off the film." It was a massive gamble. Directors didn't make ultimatums in 1956. Studios owned everything, controlled everything. But Tourneur knew something they didn't. The title wasn't just a label, it was the thesis. Nightfall, the moment when everything collapses, when innocence ends, when darkness takes over and doesn't leave. The novel understood it, the script understood it, and if the studio couldn't understand it, Tourneur didn't want his name attached. They backed down. The title stayed. And decades later, when film scholars analyze the movie, they always start with the same thing. That title. 2 syllables that contain the entire tragedy before a single frame rolls.
Lovely you, underneath the reader heavens.
The opening sequence was shot with a camera borrowed from a mortician. Tourneur wanted a specific angle, low to the ground, almost coffin level, tracking along a dark street. The studio's equipment couldn't do it. Too bulky, too expensive to modify. Tourneur started calling around, asking camera operators, rental houses, anyone who might have something unconventional. Finally, someone mentioned a funeral home in Los Angeles that used a specialized rolling camera to film memorial services. Tourneur drove there himself, met with the owner, and explained what he needed. The mortician was a film buff. He'd seen Cat People. He said, "Take it, just bring it back in one piece." They mounted the camera on the same wheeled base used to film caskets, set it 6 inches off the ground, and rolled it through the streets of downtown LA at 2 a.m. No permits, no street closures, just a guerrilla noir shot with equipment meant for the dead. The footage came back dark, grainy, unsettling, exactly what Tourneur wanted. The studio saw it and called it unprofessional. Tourneur called it art. Today, that opening shot is taught in film schools as an example of resourceful cinematography. And somewhere in Los Angeles, there's probably still a mortician who has no idea his camera helped create a masterpiece. There's a scene where Vanning sits in a diner drinking coffee, watching people pass by. It lasts nearly 3 minutes with almost no dialogue. Just Aldo Ray's face, the sound of a spoon against a cup, the murmur of other patrons. The studio wanted it cut. They said it was boring, that audiences would get restless. Storyboarded the scene months before shooting, timing it down to the second. He knew what he was doing. This wasn't filler. This was the moment Vanning realizes he has nowhere left to run. The coffee scene wasn't about action. It was about resignation. Ray understood immediately. He suggested playing it without any expression at all, just a blank stare. Tourneur agreed. They filmed it in one take, no coverage, no safety shots. Just 3 minutes of a man confronting his own helplessness in a public place. When the rough cut screened for test audiences, something unexpected happened. The room went silent. Not bored silent, transfixed silent. People leaned forward. Some stopped eating their popcorn, because in a film full of chases and confrontations, the scariest moment was watching a man sit still and give up. The studio kept the scene. They never apologized for doubting it. But Tourneur knew. Sometimes the most powerful action is no action at all. The film's budget was so tight they reused costumes from other productions. Aldo Ray's jacket came from a Western that wrapped 2 weeks earlier. Anne Bancroft's dresses were leftovers from a melodrama that flopped at the box office. Even Brian Keith's suit was borrowed from the wardrobe department's generic criminal rack, pieces that had been cycled through a dozen films. But Tourneur didn't see it as a limitation. He saw it as authenticity. These weren't movie characters. These were real people wearing real clothes that had history, wear, stains that couldn't be hidden. When Ray showed up for his first fitting, the costume designer apologized. The jacket had a tear in the lining. The collar was frayed. Ray said, "Perfect. This guy doesn't have money for new clothes." Tourneur went further. He told the actors to wear their costumes for a week before shooting started. Sleep in them, eat in them, live in them. Make them feel like second skin. By the time cameras rolled, nothing looked fresh. Everything looked lived in, desperate, real. Other productions spent thousands on period-perfect wardrobes. Nightfall spent hundreds on other people's leftovers. And somehow it looked more authentic than anything else released that year. Because poverty, real poverty, doesn't come from a tailor. It comes from necessity. And that jacket, that torn, borrowed, recycled jacket, it told Vanning's story before he ever opened his mouth. Halfway through production, the cinematographer quit. No warning, no explanation. He just walked off set in the middle of a shooting day and never came back. Tourneur was furious, then panicked. They were already behind schedule, over budget, and losing light. The studio sent a replacement, a young DP fresh out of film school who'd never shot a feature before. Tourneur pulled him aside and said, "I need shadows. Deep, heavy, no compromise." The kid nodded, scared but determined. What happened next became legend. The new cinematographer pushed the lighting darker than anyone thought possible. He used practical lights, single sources, let huge portions of the frame disappear into blackness. The studio watched the dailies and said it was too dark, that audiences wouldn't see half the action. Tourneur said, "Exactly." He wanted viewers to feel like they were stumbling through the dark alongside Vanning, unsure what was coming next. The cinematographer kept pushing. Some scenes were lit with nothing but a single street lamp or a car's headlights. It was radical, risky, and absolutely stunning. By the end of production, that young DP had created some of the most striking noir imagery of the 1950s. And the guy who quit? He went on to have a decent career, but no one remembers his name. Because sometimes the person who walks away does everyone a favor. The car chase wasn't choreographed. Tourneur told the stunt drivers where to start and where to end, then said, "Go." No marks, no rehearsal, just two cars tearing through actual Los Angeles streets at 3 a.m. with a camera truck trying to keep up. The stunt coordinator protested, said it was too dangerous, that someone could get killed. Tourneur didn't budge. He wanted chaos, wanted the fear of not knowing what would happen next. They mounted cameras wherever they'd fit, inside the cars, on the bumpers, even strapped one to a telephone pole and hoped it would catch something. The drivers took off, burning rubber, skidding through intersections. One car clipped a parked vehicle. Nobody stopped. Another jumped a curb, tires screaming, still rolling. When they finally pulled over, the drivers were shaking, adrenaline drunk, terrified. The footage came back raw, violent, completely unpredictable. Exactly 0 studio-mandated safety protocols were followed. Today, insurance companies would shut down a production for even suggesting it. But in 1956, Tourneur got away with it. And what ended up on screen wasn't movie magic. It was genuine recklessness captured on film. The chase lasts barely 2 minutes, but it feels endless because nothing is safe. Nothing is controlled. Just metal and asphalt and the very real possibility that something could go horribly wrong. Anne Bancroft rewrote her final scene without permission. The script had Marie delivering a speech about hope, about believing in second chances. Standard Hollywood ending material. Bancroft read it and told Tourneur it felt false. A woman who'd been through what Marie experienced wouldn't suddenly turn optimistic. She'd be cautious, guarded, realistic. Tourneur told her to try something different, so Bancroft threw out the dialogue entirely. In the final take, she says almost nothing, just looks at Vanning, gives a slight nod, and walks away. No declarations, no promises, just acknowledgement. The studio executive watching the dailies asked where the big moment was, where Marie confessed her feelings. Tourneur said that was the moment. The executive didn't get it. But Bancroft understood something crucial about Noir. These characters don't get happy endings. They get survival. And sometimes survival looks like walking away while you still can. That silent nod became one of the most discussed moments in the film. Critics called it heartbreaking restraint. Bancroft called it the only honest choice. Years later, when young actors asked her about playing emotion, she'd reference that scene. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to give the audience what they expect. The film's score almost didn't exist. The composer hired by the studio wrote a traditional noir soundtrack, heavy brass, dramatic strings, music that told you exactly how to feel. Tourneur hated it. He wanted silence, wanted the sound of footsteps and breathing to carry scenes. The studio panicked. Movies needed music. Audiences expected it. Tourneur proposed a compromise. Minimal score, mostly ambient sound, music only when absolutely necessary. They agreed reluctantly. The composer went back and stripped everything down to bare essentials. Long stretches of the film play with nothing but environmental noise. Wind, traffic, distant voices. In the snow sequences, you hear nothing but Ray's labored breathing and boots crunching through ice. It was radical for 1956. Most noirs drowned in melodramatic orchestration. Nightfall let silence do the work. And it terrified audiences in the best way. Without music to guide them, viewers had to pay attention, had to feel the tension themselves, rather than being told it was there. Modern sound designers study Nightfall as a masterclass in restraint. What you don't hear becomes more powerful than anything you do. The score that almost ruined the film ended up being the score that defined it. Brian Keith performed his own stunts despite explicit instructions not to. Insurance wouldn't cover it, the studio wouldn't allow it, even Tourneur told him to use the double. Keith ignored everyone. During a fight scene in a warehouse, he was supposed to step aside and let the stuntman take the hit. Instead, Keith took the punch himself. Full force, no pulling back. He hit the ground hard, split his lip, bled all over the floor. The crew rushed in. Keith waved them off, said keep rolling. Tourneur was furious and impressed. The take stayed in the film because the impact was real, the blood was real, and Keith's reaction, genuine shock, anger, pain, couldn't be faked. Later, Keith explained his reasoning. If the audience sees a cut to a stunt double even for a second, they're pulled out of the story. They know it's fake. But if they see the actor's face the whole time, if they see real consequence, they believe everything. It was dangerous, stupid, and completely against protocol. It was also brilliant. That warehouse fight became one of the film's most visceral sequences because nothing about it feels staged. When Keith hits the ground, you feel it. Because he felt it first. The ending was almost censored by the production code office. In the original cut, Vanning doesn't get a clean resolution. He survives, but there's no redemption, no restoration of his name. He's just alive, marked forever by what happened. The code office said that wasn't acceptable. Crime had to be punished, innocence had to be rewarded. Tourneur refused to change it. He argued that real life doesn't work that way, that sometimes innocent people get destroyed and never recover. The censors didn't care about realism, they cared about moral clarity, back and forth for weeks. Finally, Tourneur added a single line of dialogue deliberately ambiguous that could be interpreted as hope if you squinted. The code office approved it. But Tourneur shot the scene in such a way that the line barely registers. The visuals tell the real story. Vanning walking away, alone, diminished. A man who proved his innocence but lost everything anyway. Critics at the time didn't catch it. They thought the ending was traditional. Modern viewers see it differently. They see the darkness Tourneur smuggled past the censors. One line to satisfy the code, one image to tell the truth. Aldo Ray refused to watch the film when it premiered. He attended the screening, sat in the back, then walked out after 15 minutes. People thought he hated it. Ray later explained he couldn't separate himself from Vanning. He'd lived in that character's desperation for months, filmed in real cold, real fear, real exhaustion. Watching it on screen felt like reliving trauma. He said it wasn't the performance he objected to. It was the memory of how he got there. For weeks after filming wrapped, Ray would wake up in the middle of the night, convinced he was still running. The line between character and actor had blurred too much. Some actors can shake off roles easily. Ray couldn't. Vanning stayed with him for years. He'd see snow and feel panic. He'd hear sirens and tense up. Method actors talk about the cost of deep immersion. Ray never called himself method, but he paid the price anyway. He eventually watched the film decades later, called it the best work he ever did, but he never watched it a second time. Once was enough, because some performances don't just take something from you during filming, they take something permanently. Alfred Hitchcock saw Nightfall and immediately called Tourneur. This is according to multiple sources close to both directors. Hitchcock rarely praised other filmmakers, especially in the thriller genre he dominated. But he told Tourneur that Nightfall understood something most directors missed. Real suspense isn't about what might happen. It's about what's already happened that you can't escape. Hitchcock had built his career on future threat, the bomb under the table that might explode. Tourneur did the opposite. The bomb already went off. Now we watch the aftermath. Hitchcock reportedly screened Nightfall multiple times, studying the structure, the way tension builds not from anticipation but from inevitability. Some scholars argue you can see Nightfall's influence in Hitchcock's later work, particularly in films where the protagonist is trapped by circumstances beyond their control. Tourneur never publicly confirmed the conversation. He said only that he and Hitchcock had mutual respect. But crew members swear it happened. And there's something poetic about the master of suspense calling the director of Nightfall to say, "You did something I couldn't." Whether it's true or Hollywood mythology doesn't matter. Because the film earned that story. Real or not, it's believable. And sometimes in cinema, believable is enough. The film flopped at the box office. Not mildly, catastrophically. It opened in limited release, played for 2 weeks in most theaters, then vanished. Critics were mixed. Some called it too dark, too depressing. Others praised its authenticity, but admitted audiences wouldn't respond. The studio buried it quickly, cut their losses, moved on. Tourneur was devastated. He'd fought for every frame, every choice, and the world didn't care. For years, Nightfall was forgotten. No television broadcasts, no repertory screenings. It became a ghost. Then in the 1970s, French film critics rediscovered it. They screened it at the Cinémathèque, wrote essays, called it an overlooked masterpiece. American critics followed. Suddenly, film schools were teaching it. Cinematographers were studying it. What failed commercially became a textbook example of noir done right. Today, Nightfall appears on greatest noir lists, gets Criterion-level analysis, influences filmmakers worldwide. The audience that rejected it in 1956 never got a chance to reconsider, but new audiences found it, and they understood what the original viewers couldn't. Sometimes movies aren't made for their moment, they're made for the future, and Nightfall's future turned out better than its present ever was. There's a continuity error in the climactic scene that Tourneur left in deliberately. Vanning's jacket changes position between shots. First it's buttoned, then unbuttoned, then buttoned again. The editor caught it, showed Tourneur, offered to fix it. Tourneur said no, leave it. His reasoning was simple. By that point in the film, Vanning is so exhausted, so disoriented, that continuity doesn't matter. The audience should feel his fractured state, his inability to keep track of anything, including his own clothes. Most directors obsess over continuity. Every glass at the exact same level, every hair in place. Tourneur weaponized mistakes. He wanted the film to feel like it was unraveling alongside the character. Some viewers notice the error, most don't. But everyone feels it. That sense that nothing is quite, that reality itself is becoming unreliable. It's the kind of choice that makes film professors argue. Was it intentional brilliance or just a mistake he justified later? Does it matter? The effect works. And in noir, where paranoia and destabilization are the point, maybe perfect continuity would be the real error. Maybe chaos serves the story better than precision. When Nightfall wrapped, Tourneur told the cast and crew that he'd never make another film like it. Too hard, too painful, too much fighting with studios. He kept that promise mostly. He went on to direct other films, some successful, but nothing with Nightfall's edge, nothing that cut as deep. Years later, in one of his last interviews, someone asked if he regretted anything about his career. Tourneur thought for a long time, then said only one thing. He wished he'd made more films like Nightfall. Consequences be damned. Films that scared studios, that challenged audiences, that refused to compromise. He'd played it safer after that, trying to balance art and commerce. But Nightfall was pure, unfiltered vision. And once you create something that honest, everything else feels like settling. The interviewer asked if he'd do it again, knowing how it would turn out. The box office failure, the studio battles, the years of obscurity before rediscovery. Tourneur smiled and said, "Tomorrow, if they'd let me." Some films define careers. Some define filmmakers. Nightfall did both. David Goodis, the author of the original novel, never saw the finished film. He died in 1967, just as Nightfall was beginning its critical resurrection. According to friends, Goodis had mixed feelings about Hollywood adaptations of his work. He appreciated the money but felt films could never capture the internal desperation of his characters. When Nightfall was released, he saw it once and reportedly said nothing, just nodded and left the theater. Friends pressed him for an opinion. He said only, "They tried." Whether that was praise or dismissal, no one knew. Goodis wrote stories about people trapped by fate, destroyed by circumstances they couldn't control. His protagonists never escaped. They just endured until they couldn't anymore. Tourneur's film understood that. It didn't soften the edges or promise redemption. It let the darkness stay dark. If Goodis had lived to see the film's rediscovery, to read the essays calling it a masterwork, would he have changed his assessment? Maybe. Or maybe he would have given the same two-word response. They tried. Because for David Goodis, trying was never the question. The question was whether anyone could truly film despair and make audiences sit through it without looking away. Tourneur answered that question. And Goodis, wherever he is, probably knows it. Nightfall didn't ask permission. It didn't wait for audiences to catch up. It was too dark, too honest, too willing to let innocence lose. And maybe that's why it failed. Maybe that's why it endured. In a genre full of shadows, this one refused to let any light in. If this deep dive into forgotten noir grabbed you, hit like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments what classic film we should uncover next. Thanks for watching. And remember, in Nightfall, the darkness doesn't end. It just finds new places to hide.